guys.
Hello.
Welcome to Etta, Arlene, Spiritcast. If you're new to this podcast, we talk about all things related to mindfulness, magic, astrology, tarot, Reiki, meditation, anything in that realm. And today we have two very amazing guests. They are Ferranti and Jeff. They're awesome. They're our friends. And, you know, they're here to chat about a bunch of metaphysical stuff, some spiritual experiences, things in that world. But Mesmerizing. Lilydale. Astrology. Lots of
tarot.
Stuff. Yeah. We're not going to spoil too much though because it's a long episode. Before we get into it, do you want to tell them where they can find?
So you can follow us over on Instagram, Tumblr, Pinterest, at Arlene. You can follow us on Twitter where we tweet a lot at @edpro_PGH. You can follow us on Facebook if you feel like it. We don't really do much on there, but we have it. It's at Arlene PGH. And then if you like what we do, we post Reiki infused videos to YouTube almost every single day. You can go over there and like and subscribe. And you can go to our website, ettarlene.com, and sign up for our email list to get a free Reiki session almost every single month. Yeah.
There it is. So, it's been a while. We know we haven't posted, we had a break for a couple months, and this is a 2-part episode. So this is the first part. Next week we'll have the second part. And then we're going to get back into it. I think we're going to talk about different types of channeling in the later episodes.
Yeah.
I want to do one about astrology, like the astrological houses, but not what you're thinking. We've had a conversation about how you can look at your chart and you can see how certain energies are going to play in your life. And I thought it'd be fun to talk about the houses, because if you don't have certain if you don't have things in certain houses, it can indicate whether it's important or not to you, which is really cool. I think of other topics. I don't know.
We have a couple topics. Yeah, we're ready to unload on you guys.
Yeah, the Fae's another one. We have a friend who works with the Fae.
I am trying to convince you. I think it'd be a good idea for us to do interviewing each other again.
Yeah, we might do that again.
Because I've been listening to a lot of the old episodes, and you guys should too. It's really good. Mm-hmm. But I thought it'd be cool to do an update since it's been 3 years now since we did the podcast. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's been a while, and I think that we've both grown, metaphysically speaking.
Severely. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. So that'll be fun. We can consider that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel too, if we do that, it might, spill the beans on some of our practices. So, some of the things we don't talk about on the podcast.
What if I do, I don't know what they call it, plead the fifth on certain things?
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's pretty
Pass.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if, the spirits want us to talk about certain things. Or bring them up at all, I mean.
We'll see. It'll be fun.
And then we'll probably talk about our Halloween shenanigans, because we're gonna go to a graveyard with our friends who are on this podcast
and do some stuff
and do some magic. Not at night though, and it's not as dramatic as it sounds, but that'll probably be a story.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's not, it might be really boring.
I don't think that anything that we do is boring. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of Renaissance Fair. We're doing that. I'm an elf. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be my badass self.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the lone elf in a group of But I found ears that match my skin, and I got
it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I really enjoy the Renaissance Festival, so
yeah, I just like dressing up.
I'm just gonna go get some beer, and
I'm gonna bring my runes with me probably.
Okay, of course.
Gotta have those.
Look at some stuff. Buying some metaphysical stuff.
Yeah,
They have a lot of vendors,
yeah,
so I might get a new deck or something.
Yeah. As if we were supposed to go a couple weeks ago, but things came up, but it's a redo.
We're ready.
Yeah.
But I think we should get into the podcast.
Yeah, we should get into it. We're
short
just
and sweet.
Rambling. So, anyways, get into the episode. It's awesome.
And more to come.
And, yeah.
All right.
Alright guys, we're back, and today we have Ferranti and Jeff, and they're here to talk about all kinds of stuff. We're really excited. We've been trying to have them on the podcast for months now.
Yes.
And we finally have them here. So, do you guys want to tell them a little bit about yourselves?
Definitely. All right. Well, true to form, I'm a vibrant Gemini. My name is Ferranti. I guess, what do I say about myself? I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah. The next question that you will have is, yes, I was raised Mormon. Everybody always asks that. No, I do not have multiple wives. That's typically the following question from there. But yeah, I've lived in Pittsburgh for about 8 years now, would you say? Yeah.
It's a great city.
Yeah. Oh, I love it here. It's just the right size. Philadelphia is a little bit overwhelming for me. So, originally a desert-born person. And then my husband, Jeff, obviously lives with me as well. So, you want to...
Yeah, I moved to Utah, found what I was looking for here in this man, and we moved back to Pittsburgh about 8 years ago. So, I guess from a spiritual perspective, Ferranti was an atheist when I met him.
Okay.
So, we were members of a small spiritualist community north in Chautauqua County, New York, Lilydale Assembly. And I actually first went to Lilydale in 2004 for the first time and went to a series of week-long kind of sessions and kind of really, was my introduction to spiritualism. And then when we moved here, in the heart of the pandemic, I decided that I would introduce my husband to one of my favorite places, and we spent, and that's really kind of where our spiritual journey began.
Yeah.
About 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we want to go to Lilydale because of you guys.
We're all going to get into a caravan one day and just go. I wonder if you can charter like a personal Greyhound. But it's awesome.
We'll do a party bus.
Right? For real.
Just all go.
For real.
You guys went recently, right?
Yeah, we actually went last weekend. We always go before season opens. And for anyone who doesn't know what Lilydale is, so it's essentially a small community. It's a little hamlet in the beautiful forests of New York.
Small community,
largest spiritual center.
Spiritual center in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have, pretty much all different types of craft, represented there. A lot of traditional spiritualism,
tarot,
Reiki. It's kind of a mishmash there.
Yeah, but it's essentially a lot like a lot of people are familiar with like Sedona, right?
Yeah.
So there's the vortex or vortices in Sedona. Vortices in Sedona. So Lilydale's very similar. There are 5
total.
5 on the grounds themselves.
Which is kind of like, when you think of the number of people that go to Arizona for that kind of stuff versus just what we have here in this area. And Lilydale actually was the birthplace of, or that region of New York was the birthplace of a lot of large religions. Mormonism came from there. Seventh-day Adventists came from there. The time was... there was the Great Awakening, right? They called it. There was a lot of spiritual camps happening in the U.S., and that's really kind of where it started in that time frame. With just the same time that the progressive Protestant and the Methodist and the Calvinists, kind of sprung up here across the U.S. Spiritualism was right there, in the early roots.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went there last weekend. We typically go before season. So season is the entire town is registered mediums with the various churches that are there. And so during the season, you can actually go to Lilydale, and they do essentially public messages. So... They basically will just sit you there, and it's kind of like a crossroads where like people on the other side can come to a place where mediums will be, to be able to give messages to people who will be in attendance there. So it's super, super neat. That's actually kind of what my springboard back into a religious belief system of any sort or any kind of spiritual belief came from, was going to Lilydale and getting some of those messages myself. So.
Wow.
We have to go.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I was about to ask you if you ever got like a message that really like shook you.
So for me, it was a lot like a house was already pre-wired and then the lights came on, like someone connected it to the grid. So Mormonism, and a lot of people might disagree with me on this, but there's a lot of things that parallel a lot of other spiritualist elements. Like, for example, Mormons believe, or I should say LDS people, since that is now the preferred term. LDS people believe that you can heal through the laying on of hands with people, right?
Okay.
To essentially channel divine energy, ask for blessings, administer blessings, etc. So there's, or even just like how things relate to the stars, or like how to maintain your body and clean eating. There's a lot of those concepts that I was already brought up with.
Okay.
Mormonism and I didn't jive, but when I went to Lilydale and I got my first message, which was like, you work in a career where you teach people, which is 100% accurate. You're an artist, 100% accurate, right? I discovered through one of these messages that people, I'm biracial, by the way, people on my paternal side, so the black side of my family, were actually in the military, which I did not know until I got my message and then went back and talked to my grandma. So like,
Wow. Oh, wow.
it's a really crazy experience. And so where they do these messages is a place called The Stump. It's in the Leolin Woods. And the coolest part about this, so when you also layer this on top of the vortices, different traveling mediums and residential mediums have been doing readings in that place, that messages in that place, for over 200 years. And so that kind of energy footprint that's already established there is really, really deep. So it's a magical experience to walk back there. They call it the cathedral, and it's this big awning of a canopy of trees.
But when you go places, sometimes it feels different. Have you ever? Is it
Everywhere.
like that there?
At the moment you get into Lilydale, you can tell that you're just in a different place, right?
Okay.
It's very calming. I mean, it's a very charming town, but truth be told, in the summertime there's a lot of tourism going on.
Okay.
And you get that, but oftentimes we head up there in the fall and the winter. If it's not, it's Buffalo, New York, right? So tons of snow. But if we're able to, and then in the springtime, for me, every place has its own special connection with spirit, right? So the Stump is one area. The Forest Temple, right? It's literally a temple in the forest. That's another area that is just, you sit there and you meditate. And you realize just how connected with this, universe you are. And, Ferranti and I belong to the Church of the Living Spirit, right? And the great thing about our church and being part of it is that it's really a focus on the God of your own understanding.
Okay.
A lot of these, different practices, different religions are the same philosophy spun in a different way, right? And so it allows you that openness to be able to express your individual craft, your individual differences that you might have with connecting with spirit. It's just one of the draws that we both have to that area in general.
Yeah. One of the beautiful things, too, about, and I just want to clarify this, because I know when people hear church, they go, because that's just like a cultural thing that we do, right? Yeah. Especially as people who practice any kind of magic or metaphysical work or energy work. It's quote unquote taboo if you grew up in one of the big three, right? Yeah. But the beauty of this is, with that God of your own understanding, it is literally that you can be a Catholic and be a spiritualist, right? You can be a Mormon and be a spiritualist. You can be a witch, you can be a pagan, you can be anything that you want to be. The idea at the core of what it is, there's a few principles, but it is that God of your own understanding, and then really just the golden rule. And also that life continues afterwards. So there's actually a documentary, I think it's on Netflix, called No One Dies in Lilydale.
Oh.
HBO.
Yeah, HBO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch that today.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
No, we're going to.
Okay, perfect.
I'm like, oh, we'll do that.
Yeah, that was kind of
No
my...
One Dies in Lilydale.
Yeah, No One Dies in Lilydale. Yeah, it's a good one. It's short and sweet. I think... And again, this depends a lot on, like, if you were raised Catholic and you hear temple, you probably think this big, grandiose, lovely structure with stained glass windows and all sorts of... It is not that, right? This is a quiet forest hamlet where there are animals everywhere. You can, like, last time we were there was a blue heron that landed in this lake, like, 10 feet in front of us. Like, just crazy... actually, when we first went there, to sum this up easily... was in 2020, right? And so, not talking about politics, not talking about COVID, but those things were actively in swing and pretty well at their worst. So people were really, really ugly to each other. And as soon as we crossed those gates, it was like no one cared. Wow. Like, it was literally a reprieve from just being able to breathe for a minute and forget about the insanity going on outside. Yeah.
So there's Damien Eccles, I like a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Hermetic witchcraft, right? Is it him?
Yeah. So he does a lot of talks and stuff. And one of the things he says is, like, how
our spirituality, stuff like that, like all these different belief systems, because it's meeting people where they're at. So there's not really like a wrong path per se. It's just meeting you how you'll understand. And so we're so quick to be like, you're wrong, like that's not how it is. But it's like spirit is coming to you this way because we're all so different. So why wouldn't there be different ways of like connecting and communicating? So it's kind of cool that, you know, your church is saying that it's just meeting you where you're at. It's not about like
trying to
dogma,
yes,
or
yes,
rule
that's what I'm trying to
following,
say, yes.
yeah.
I believe that. So.
Yeah.
You know, and we say again church, but we're talking. We have astrologists speaking.
Yeah, well-known astrologists or
you know, and,
astrologers.
And talking, and you know, it's just so open to all, you know, and kind of what you said, and that's really my personal opinion is, you know, all these different religions, crafts, you know, it's just our physical manifestation of spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever your understanding is.
Yeah.
And so, you know, whether you get that from reading a tarot card or saying a prayer or doing meditation or yoga or whatever that might be, right? It's that, you know, conduit to which spirit manifests themselves to us, to where we undeniably know this is from a bigger source, a higher source.
Yeah, and actually just dovetailing off of that, I mean, just some of the ways that we've even discovered just since starting this journey, both together and in parallel with one another, like we have singing bowls, right? And so Jeff is extremely sensitive to vibrations, right? So he gets a great, I of course can use those for like meditation and relaxation, but like the experience is clearly very different. But for me, I do a lot of meditation, I do tarot, a little bit of kitchen witchcraft thrown in there, but a lot of the stuff that I do is visual based or like very tactile based. But at the core of it, it is all that kind of like creating something new or working with different, you know, random materials to assemble something. So it is, you know, there's not a prescriptive way. And I think that if there's one thing that I've learned throughout this journey, it's that's actually quite the opposite of what you want to tell people, right? If you tell people, here are the rules, follow these, and you can just be a jerk the rest of the time, right? As long as you say you're sorry.
Yeah.
That doesn't really help anybody, especially not the person who is believing in those rules. And that's the worst part is you kind of neuter your ability to not only spiritually progress, but self-analyze your own behavior. Because you just have this like, well, it's fine, or like, I didn't do this, and so I'm garbage, right?
Yeah.
Neither of which are healthy for anybody.
Yeah, you're not like taking it in and allowing yourself to develop from like the lessons you learn.
Right.
Based off, you know, whatever it is, whether it's bad or good or whatever.
Well, and when you start with like heaven and hell as like team camp A or camp B, those are the stakes. When you do quote unquote something bad, there is no like non-judgmental way to look at yourself because you're hardwired into I really messed up, right? And so then you of course start the shame cycle that drives you further to take on risky behaviors. Like it's a cascading thing, and it breeds a lot of xenophobia and other things that just, you know, when you break it down to what the actual teaching is, which is love other people, the rules or the concept of like an enemy of God or someone who is a sinner who should be cast out really don't actually match up with like the core statements of the religion, right?
Yeah.
So that's been something that's been a little bit like, oh, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, because we actually have very differing views on religion, and we both, you know, we have our spiritual marriage together, right? Every year we do our vows at the stump and renew them and speak them over on our anniversary as a renewal to, you know, the fact that, you know, we're in this journey together, but we have two very spiritual different journeys, right? And two very different ways that we exercise our connection with the spirit world. And so that's really what Lilydale is all about. It's just, you know, meeting you where you're at, and then whatever that connection is, or that knowing and understanding that you have with spirit, and then really showing you that and saying, "Here I am."
Yeah. The veil is thin, y'all.
So very thin. So very thin.
The first time I think one of the first times we went out there, we decided to stay overnight. And if you stay on the grounds, you can just hang out and do whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it was a new moon, weirdly enough. So it was like pitch dark, and so we walked. There's the trails like.
This is the first time you went?
Probably the second time.
Okay.
Yeah. So quarter of a mile down the trail, we get there. We get to the stump. It is jet black, pitch dark. We're walking back, and we experienced an encounter of sorts, and it wasn't anything verbal. It was because like we were both like, "What is happening?" But for me, it was very visual. Like I saw an orb, or a fairy, or different terminology for the same thing. Different people mean different things, but Jeff again experiences it in a very different way. And so, the nice part about it is we are able even though we look at things through a different lens, we can have a conversation about the same story. And that has been really helpful because, naturally when you have these experiences, you're like, nah, that didn't happen. Or you talk yourself out of it. Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing.
Yeah. One thing, like, when it comes to that type of stuff, I'm always saying now, like, why don't we just, like, observe what happened and just don't attach anything to it? Like, this is what happened, this is what I experienced, and not do the talking one way or the other, like, oh, well, it has to be magical, or, oh, well, it has to not be, and just, like, observe it and kind of, like it's data or something, like, and that way we can, like, learn what it is, because we don't know everything. It's the other thing. A lot of, like, when it comes to, like, paranormal stuff or spiritual stuff, whatever you have it, I feel like a lot of times we try to, like, oh, well, that thing happened because of this, and we try to, like, come up with, like, an explanation, and it's okay to, like, not know what it is. It's okay to just, like, have something weird happen and be like, yeah, so that happened, and just because, like, I mean, why not, like, why go through that?
And I think that same concept keeps people back in life, right? I mean, afraid to, to push forward.
Why can't I start my own business?
When they, those doubts begin, and then all of a sudden, they fester, and we know that you can really do anything if you really, your mind is there, but it's that being mortal, that humanness that comes in that says, oh no, I can't do this, or oh, that wasn't right, or oh, I shouldn't believe that, and it actually hinders your spiritual progression when you consistently doubt, that divinity or the divineness of God. Yeah,
it's so. For example, when we were in Lilydale, there was someone who received a message, and I heard the medium afterward talking. This is not going to be all about Lilydale, but a lot of the experiences do happen there. But the medium who gave the message to this person was like, oh, this popped up on my phone, and Spirit communicates with me all the time. Now, just a little bit of background on me. I work in technology and stuff, and so, like, algorithms and the predictive stuff, like, I get that, right? So I was like, meh, maybe not. But what I realized in doing that is that's two sides of the same coin. That rational mind that can talk you out of those things, if you make the commitment to yourself that I'm just going to accept and then review as things continue, if you go at it with that mindset, then you'll start to realize that, like, oh, this happened and that led to this and that. And so it starts to look more like, a tapestry or a narrative that you can really understand, versus if you just do a tarot reading in the morning one day in May, that is not going, I mean, it will ultimately help with your spirituality, right? Because you're doing something ritual, meditating. But if you really want to gain something out of that, write it down, right? And then see where it goes, and then how close did you land, right?
And then draw the cards again.
Yes.
I, like, on that note, I, a couple years ago, started just writing down meditations and dreams. Because I have very vivid dreams, like, creepy, like, lucid dreaming. So somebody told me to start recording it, and I did. And I'm just like, I'm putting whatever's down. I don't know. And then one day I was, like, reading through it, and there's this thread of connection. It was crazy. And, like, so, like, something would happen in a dream or meditation, and then it would say something, I don't know, like, something like, oh, maybe you're going to be a new spirit guide or something. And then, like, maybe, like, a month later, I'm journaling about, oh, I had just this meditation, I had a spirit guide come to me, and I don't know what it means. So it's, like, weird, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I was just getting, like, these crumbles, but now that I have it all written down, there's this story. And I can see, and for me, it was, because I really am interested in, like, spirit guides and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, I can see how they've been, like, helping me, but, like, without me even, like, knowing.
When you're sleeping and your mind's relaxed, they're pushing the
those salient events. And, to that point, I think there's a lot of, even outside of spirituality, right? Like, spirituality, self-care, and mental health are a triangle, and they all rely on one another equally, whether you're spiritual or not. My grandma often says, the world grows from the outside in, God grows from the inside out. So, that development is, even if you don't recognize it as spiritual, you learning to empathize with somebody, you learning to put someone else in before your own needs. Those are things that are tenets of spirituality, and when in practice of spirituality are very powerful. But on their own, they're also very powerful because spirituality is about serving the overall creation of everything better and working better with it, you know?
Yeah.
To me, at least.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just thought of this, but just like, could you imagine if we all had like one uniform way of doing everything? Like, how boring would life be if we just thought this? Like, even our thought processes. Like, some people have an internal chatter. Some people are just getting visuals. Some feelings. I was tripped out when I first heard that. I like read an article about it, and I'm like, oh, people aren't. Like, I have talking all the time. Like, I talk to myself in my head all the time. But some people don't. It's quiet, but they're getting visuals. Or some people are just feeling their next moves. And that's just our brains, you know? I'm like, how, like, could you imagine? I don't know. I just think about it. Like, it would just be boring if we all believed everything the same way, loved the same. Like, just all of it. It would just...
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's what makes, like, life beautiful, though, is being able to, like, appreciate differences and appreciate, like, all of this around us. And like, we had a conversation yesterday about how like temporary everything is, and so that makes every moment for me very beautiful because of like that uniqueness, like that unique point. So like, we're sitting here, this is it, like, you know, we're never gonna be on this couch the way we are right now recording an episode, you know, for our show. And there's something really like sacred and beautiful about that, but we're also caught up in like this hard way of living that it just like is going against the natural flow and the grain of life.
To that point, so as I mentioned earlier, I teach, and so there's a lot of different studies that go on about people's attention spans, right? Cognitive load and other things, but there's two very key things that I've observed and everything that I've read, and one is through the introduction of things like YouTube, then Facebook, then Instagram, then Snapchat stories, then Vine, now TikTok, right? Those are very, very short, right? And there's nothing wrong with those, but like when you watch 1,001 of those in a row, you just react to something so quickly, right? And so you train your brain over time to just be in this reactive, like, I saw this thing, this is my opinion, next, right? And that's actually why I think a lot of people can't meditate or think they can't, is because they're very far down that rabbit hole. But
even I struggle. You know, I've been meditating for 20 years. I struggle to meditate, right? I mean, you know, you sit there, you start meditating, and all of a sudden you're like thinking, like, what am I going to have for breakfast, right? Like, like, you're sitting there thinking, like, what time is that meeting? And you know, and so just thinking. Sometimes my meditation is just not. Is just making myself not think, right? And I think a lot of times that's the struggle, right? What does it mean to meditate, right? To stay with your thoughts, or just to sit with your thoughts.
Do you both do the daily practice journey?
So I would say, I would say
together.
That. Yeah.
So we do meditation together every day with the singing bowls and a ritualistic. You know, we do that. But we both practice very different crafts.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, so it's not, it's not hard. I'm not going to sit there and act like I can throw tarot cards, you know, and tell you about astrology.
Yes, and I Jeff is actually very talented in other arenas that I recognize I'm not. Divination is like my jam, right? I feel comfortable with that. It's my wheelhouse. Whereas Jeff with the vibration thing. You're also working on, what is that new...
well, you know, and so are you guys familiar with Franz Mesmer and Mesmerism and that kind of... So
loosely.
Okay, so middle 1700s, you know, there's a guy named Franz Mesmer, actually one of the only people who have a verb named after them, mesmerize, right? And so... really, the idea behind some of his earlier studies was animal magnetism. And the flow of this unseen energy between people, and at first he was pretty, say, scientific based, right? The time frame would have been Age of Enlightenment, so electricity was being invented, and you know we understood the earth and gases, and you know just this whole kind of scientific push, and he tried to take that concept of this universal flow of energy and make it scientific. Okay. Well, if you drink iron or metals, we can take magnets through your body, and he had a lot of thoughts of magnetizing the bodies, and so a lot of my studies is around kind of his later in life, which eventually he realized that all this stuff could be done with your hands. You didn't need magnets, right? And really the transfer of energy, there wasn't this this particularly like magnetized energy, but it was an unseen energy, right? I mean, this 150 years before Reiki, right? But like the idea that there is this, flow through. So, and much of the earlier founders of Lilydale were kind of this style. They were very much into to rapping, very much into, this Mesmer style.
To clarify, by the way, the rapping is not like throwing down sick beats. The medium that is
like
not
music style.
I mean, it's a channeling of light language. No, it's it is knocking and communicating, kind of like Morse code with the spirit world. So they can knock back with the sounds in your house. They can knock back with the sounds in the woods. Right? It just really depends on if you are in an open mental state to receive those messages.
Truth be told, like, at the time, this was the science of the day. Marie Antoinette was mesmerized. Benjamin Franklin, right, studied it, right? He was commissioned to study if it was truth or not. And, ultimately what sprung out of this, and this is kind of the hard part for me, is this is where it went, is, the trance states that they were putting people in to do these, right? Literally is the foundation of hypnosis. He is the founder, the true founder, right? There was a guy named, I think, James Baird, who came on and really took hypnosis to where it was and where it is. But Franz Mesmer was not knowing, discovered this entire science, right? The idea, and then hypnosis really became a mental kind of science, right? And then suggestive thought became a thing, and then so hypnosis went from being a spiritual thing to this very much scientific style thing. And if you go to Lilydale, they don't talk about it, right? It's this lost art. That's why I really, kind of studied it. And not a lot of people know much about it, but it's something that really resonates with my understanding and connection. Like I said, the way we connect with spirit is through that. And so I've done my best to try to keep that tradition alive, even though there's one or two people that still practice it.
That are like in their 70s.
Left in the U.S. Yeah, it's a dying...
It is an actually... Well, no offense if you're actually listening, but it is an actually dying art form. Like, it's... There's not really a legacy. And, this is what I meant is, like, I don't do that. Like, putting someone into that state is not something that works well for me. Probably just the very chaotic Gemini energy. But, I think the big difference... Because I was like, well, it sounds like Reiki. Like, what is the fundamental difference? I would compare it to, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the trance states of mesmerism are closer and more akin to maybe being like around like a shamanic journey versus
or
where,
yogi, and I mean, again, just that altered state of consciousness because you're in those.
Because there's different levels, right? So like when you guys are doing Reiki work for someone, I assume that it's not like full level 5, lockdown trance state. It's like you're still cognitively aware, right? This is like removing the ego from the equation so that way you can work directly with the energy, right?
And truly what they found was this is where the placebo effect came from.
Okay.
Right? Like, this commission that Ben Franklin was King Louis, I think King Louis VIII commissioned Ben Franklin to oversee this, and ultimately their mission was to disprove it.
Wow.
And in doing so, what they discovered is like, okay, we can disprove it, right? Because they would do the mesmerism from behind, and the person wouldn't fall down, and they would do it in front of them, and they would fall down, and they would magnetize the water and give it to them and not tell them, but then they would give them, So what they realized is the brain is so much more powerful than we realize, right? And suggestive thoughts and believing in yourself and believing that you can do something, you can actually heal yourself. You can actually do these things, right? That is what actually came out of all of this. Yes, he was discredited. He left. He was kind of put out to shame because, but ultimately 3 different sciences sprung from his teaching.
So it was like the timing of it all.
Yeah.
And now nobody even studies any of the stuff that he taught.
Wow, that's so interesting. I have a book called History of the Occult, and there's a part that's about what you're talking about. But had nothing, like, I'm just reading it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, they did that. So I feel like you're making sense of that portion that I read. Like, now I'm like, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Because, like, I don't know anything about that. When I think of mesmerizing, I think of, like, oh, your magnetism, like, your own personal energy. You're just so, like, magnetic, and you're just, you know, I didn't know anything about that.
Very few people have a name, an English word named after them.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's I really have to look into this.
Yeah, I wonder if I have to go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you should call anymore. I read 5 books.
Yeah.
So for mesmerizing, you have to put people in hypnosis state.
So the idea, you know, a lot of trance-like states, right? So hypnosis, again, is a science, right, at this point. So in the later teachings, it was all about manifesting this just from your own energy and, you know, and actually just believing enough that it actually, you know, happens. So the idea of hypnosis, these were probably very different than what you would think of hypnosis like today, right? Hypnosis today is very much taking your attention away and then, you know, suggestive thought and doing, you know, this would probably be more like a medium trance, right? Where you're going into, you know, tapping and then kind of, you know, they talk about, this is stuff that's documented, right? So you read, you can't like watch a movie on what happened, right? You read and they talk about some of the things that happened. And a lot of it is like, you know, people would be slain, right? They would fall back. They would be, you know, just kind of overwhelmed, and they could do it through just touch, right? They would put their hand toward them and they would just touch them. That's the same stuff that we see in all religions. Pentecostals do the same thing, right? I mean, you know, a lot of, you know, gurus do the same thing, right? So it's the idea, power of suggestion, power of, you know, kind of the mind. So I don't know, you know, I don't know if hypnosis is really a science or if it's the mind believing in suggestion.
Yeah.
If, you know, and so I've looked at what it means to be hypnotized. Right, and again, hypnosis has such a negative connotation, right? The tricksters, is it real? Is it not real?
Yeah.
You know, I think that people that honestly get hypnotized, having personally been hypnotized, it's real, right? Okay. I mean, you cannot, if you've actually been hypnotized before, there's no doubt in my mind that it is absolutely real. But is it religious? Is it a spiritual thing? Or is it just our minds being extremely complex, right? So that's where I go with hypnosis, is I don't know if hypnosis is our mind's ability to be so persuaded through suggestion, or if it is actually, you know, something that's divine.
Can it be both?
I was going to say, it's probably, you know, there's one thing that I say, I'm working on a book right now, and I think I've shared a few. Yeah, I've shared a few chapters of that with you. There is this thing that we've all decided where, and again, based on our Western mentality, in a lot of cases, Western mentality is actually very hostile to different types of life, right? And that's not a read on anybody or a negative. It's just, it is the way that we are, right? We fear what is different because it represents change and uncertainty. So if you bake a cake, right, you are taking flour, eggs, and a bunch of random ingredients, and you're putting them together and doing chemistry, right? There was a time before we understood all the mechanisms that made that cake come together where you would have just said, wow, that's like magic, right? Or if you make a healing salve out of olive oil and chamomile by leaving it in sunlight for 3 months, right? That's going to be something that you can dress wounds with. I'm not a doctor, but we understand it through chemistry. So there's this thing that we do where we decide it must be science or it must be religion. There cannot be a gray area in between, but that is, in my opinion, counterproductive. Math is very much a part of magic if you're an astrologer, right? Because you have to be able to understand and predict planetary movement. Language is a very important part of just about every practice, even if you don't speak any languages.
Letters.
Yeah.
Letters as well, right? Runes would be a great example of an archaic form of that. So, you know, I think that there is something to be said for, you know, second guessing the belief that everything falls into camp A or camp B, and there might be, you know, scientific tools are the way that we verify our universe and communicate it. So they're never perfect.
Having a green thumb.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the amount of energy, love, right? And we one thing we have in our relationship is we challenge each other to this one thing, and that is the universe will match your action, right? And so, you know, and everything that we do, you know, just the effort you put into it. You can't expect the spirit or the universe is just going to let you sit there and just give you everything that you want, right? Mm-hmm. But if you put action into it, right, the universe will match that action. Mm-hmm. And I think that when I look at people that are really good with plants, the amount of love they give it, right, the amount of energy, time, right, it's not, you can't hate plants and have a green thumb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just a natural love. And I think that, what you miss a lot of times is that love being given to the plant. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And you just think like, and that energy that you physically flow into that plant, and that's why you have a green thumb.
Yeah.
And that's spiritual.
And this is maybe a few layers, just suddenly several layers deeper, but, humans, you mentioned something earlier where if we were all the same, right? Mm-hmm. In my opinion, the way that the universe is right now it is all one thing, right? Mm-hmm. But if it remains as the same thing, it never meets any challenges. It never has any problems. It never makes any mistakes. It never learns anything, right? And so, there's often that adage where like, if you're hurting someone else, you're really just hurting yourself, right? Mm-hmm. That is actually quite literally very true. But it is also a part of the process, right? If we have a negative experience with somebody and we can learn to examine our behavior to avoid that in the future, that's a net gain, right? And that is something that collectively it learns, right? And so, we use God and we use the word universe pretty much interchangeably, because it is meant to not be, a person or a deity sitting somewhere, more so as it is the experience of all of what's going on right now, So that's just kind of my thoughts is like, you have to have that divergence. You have to have conflict because just like if we look at like any like death omen in anything, right? Not omen, but death sign, it is not about death. It's about the transformation of states between what you are now and where you're going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
We were talking about that in our group chat
recently.
Yes,
we were.
Mine's the devil. So right?
Yes, your tarot card is the
every
devil.
time I get mine's flipped, I'm getting the negative kind of dogma or whatever.
He's a Capricorn, yeah. So that's every tarot card has or every astrological sign, has a tarot card that's associated with. So Jeff's is the devil. He's a Capricorn. Mine is the lovers. I'm a Gemini. Interestingly enough,
the devil and lovers walk into a bar.
Right.
It's cool though, because the imagery on the devil, it has the lovers at the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah. That's kind of cool when you guys are like together.
They're both choice cards as well.
Yeah.
So they're and weirdly enough, so I'm a solar Gemini. Solar Gemini. My North Node is in Capricorn. For those of you who don't know what North Nodes are, that is basically your karmic path in this incarnation. And Jeff's is Gemini. So, like, we are literally meant to
oh my goodness.
learn from each other quite a bit. As frustrating as that can sometimes be, right?
Exactly.
That's so interesting. When you guys were talking, I was thinking about, like, the idea that we want to remove ourselves from, like, being, like, everything that's here. Like, we're all connected. You brought up plants. Like, we're a part of that natural world, though. We're part of plants. We're, like, the natural life cycles, like that's something that we're naturally a part of, like we live, we die, that type of thing. But it seems like there's conflict sometimes because we like want to remove ourselves from that, like we want to like remove ourselves from spirituality, remove ourselves from like nature or whatever. Not saying that we have to be obsessed with like certain aspects of it, but just being okay with like, like this is life. Like, I'm a part of life. I'm alive and in the present. And I don't know. I don't know why we do that. Like, if it's like, what do you guys think? Do you think it's like something that was like indoctrinated into us, where we want to like fight these like currents, or do you think it's something that we just do on our own?
I actually think it's very much that. I think that there is this kind of belief system, cultural belief system, specifically in the West, and I can't speak to everywhere, but in the United States, the way you've struggled is your story, right? Uh-huh. And so you'll often see like, oh, he came from the inner city, or oh, she came from nothing, or whatever it may be. It is the narrative of the hero's journey that sells, right? Mm-hmm. And so, the media you consume over time starts to help you paint the way that you see the world. And so if your belief system becomes, well, I have to, if I'm not suffering for this, then it surely cannot be real, right? Mm-hmm. If I don't, lose everything, then I'm not going to have these experiences. Or even if I do have these experiences, it's probably just because I was tired or whatever, right? So it's kind of that you're an artist, right? Mm-hmm. So we do this thing where we, quote unquote, suffer for our art, which is a pain in the butt, right? And I always catch myself doing it where I'm like, I'll be bummed out and I'm like, I'll draw and I'll put on something sad and I'm like, this is stupid, right? Like, it's great to feel your feelings. You should feel your feelings, but it doesn't make sense to entrench yourself further in grief for no reason. And I think that people subconsciously do that quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
that self-loathing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, I think a lot of it is that, the big religions that everyone is familiar with, there are these clauses where it's like, you must live this way or you are a bad person who's going to hell or outer darkness or whatever you call it, right? So when people break away from that and say, well, okay, I tried drinking and I didn't die immediately, nor did I burst into flames, or I had sex before I got married and no one died and, it's fine. So obviously everything else is crap, right? Yeah. It desensitizes you from wanting to go seek that out further because you are taught that it must be this way, so you never let go, right?
And then, we lose the point of, love and happiness, the things, the experience is what I'm trying to say. We don't, fully get to experience what it is to be alive because we're so hyper-focused on certain things, am I going to go to hell? Am I doing the right thing? It doesn't even have to be hell. It can be, anything.
Even just material.
Yeah, just
social standards.
Am I in the right job, right career? Did I do? And so just, float, what is right for me? What will make me happy?
Right.
What will make me love my life or whatever.
You spend all your energy maintaining the box that was given to you instead of exploring what's outside of that box.
I think the more we spend in our spiritual journeys, the more you realize just how important the fancy cars and houses and you just want to move to the woods and live with nature because you realize just how short life is. But also, I think, for me, I will look at religion and say, I can believe in this part and that part, right? And I can look at Christianity and think, this part and that part, and Buddhism, this part and that part, and so I can look at spirituality and just say, I don't believe in that, that just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I think that, that is an important aspect, is that just because it doesn't work for somebody, as long as you're respectful of it, I can see why tarot works for my husband, right? And I can see why Christianity works for my family, right? And but ultimately, I truly for me, it goes back to those are all conduits to which you're manifesting your craft. It's how you do it, right? If that gives you the intuition to tap with spirit through tarot, that's great. If you do it through mesmerism, that's wonderful. If you do it through rapping, if you do it through, Wiccan, witchcraft, name whatever it could be, magic, right? It's how you get there. It's really how you get there.
Yeah, these are tools that are accessible to all of us, but not every plumber needs a carpenter saw, and not every carpenter saw needs a plumber's wrench.
There you go.
And I'm never going to sit here and act like I can throw tarot cards. I don't connect. And it's not.
We have tried.
But I'm not going to, try to connect a sense that the spirit doesn't tell me I connect with.
I really appreciate what you said. Sometimes things you don't have to force certain things because you're on this journey to become spiritual in some form, or you want to connect with divine. You don't have to force yourself to learn tarot or learn something that's more popular because there's more information about it. So you're I have to be able to understand this, and then I feel like it can stifle your growth instead of just being the seeker, finding what resonates. And then when it feels right, going all in. And sometimes it presents itself to you. I know with Reiki, it just happened. We just found a teacher, and then we found another one, and it was boom. Our attunement was the aha. That would be the moment where I was everything's real. Everything.
There's more to this life.
Yeah, it was. And I was talking to another guest, and we were talking about that, and he said that because everybody's Reiki attunement's different, and ours was really ridiculous, and he said that's what had to be done so you would understand that there's more, so you'd be oh yeah, I get it. But I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is that there's not one particular way to go about, even if it feels
and you
like
can cross over. I had a
Yeah.
Reiki session last week.
Yeah.
Right? I you know, and I'm lucky. I have a therapist that does Reiki.
Wow.
And like she knows that I'm a spiritualist.
Yeah.
Right, and so she knows that I go to a church where we have healers, and you know, I mean, we have a lot of healers and things in our church, and every Sunday they come forth and they heal people, and they do a lot of things that you would see cross over there. So that's, again, you can cross over. You know, you don't have to be an expert in Reiki to understand that you can truly get benefits from it, right? That actually this stuff works, and it makes a difference, and that's why I like our church. That's why I like going there, because you can be a Mesmer and a Wiccan and a witch and a Reiki master and a Buddhist all at the same time.
I would say that, you know, that's another one of the things that I think that we culturally talk ourselves out of, right? For example, if we're looking at math, there is not a finite amount, but there is a discipline course where you get to a certain point and like you are now a mathematician, right? Spiritualism and practices like these don't work that way. The number one thing that you have to accept going into this is that you're never going to be an expert. That's the entire goal of this, right? Is to experience that journey and just to learn what it can teach you, because I read tarot, right? If you pick up a tarot deck, you may get totally different messages that are about maybe the people around you rather than how to improve yourself, because every deck is different and everyone's energy path is different. You know, I think a question that you guys probably get quite often is, where do I start, you know, with whatever? Start anywhere, you know, bake a freaking cake. If the cake feels good and you feel accomplished and happy at the end of it and you were able to pass 2 hours without, you know, thinking about things that stress you out, guess what? That's kitchen witchcraft. That's a thing for you, right?
It's like a form of meditating too.
Yeah.
Like when your mind can just... That's what I tell when people are like, I can't meditate. I'll say, well, maybe do something first that your mind, everything goes quiet when you do it. Like running, anything that... Everybody has something different. Like you were saying, baking. And then, you know, try sitting for 5 minutes. And then try longer and see what happens.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's funny when people tell me that... Typically the people that tell me that they cannot meditate are the people who I know play a lot of video games. That's where they spend a lot of their time, right?
Huh.
Yeah, but you're focused on that.
Oh,
while
you're
right.
Doing it. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So you get that flow state.
You're never going to have all the noise if you're playing a video game.
Right,
right. That's a part of it.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of things that we do in our lives can be sacred, can be like that if you look at it from a different perspective.
I know, for me, Ferranti will, hey, are we ready to go meditate, right? That's our end of the night thing.
I love that you guys do that. I would say, couples goals.
Right, let's just come to bed. I don't want you to get into bed after I go to sleep.
And you know, and I'm not bashful to say, I just can't today. Right, because I know that no matter what I do, I'm not going to force myself into meditation, right? Yes. And so, you know, your mind's racing. You have a lot of stuff. I've worked late, right? Things like that, where I know that I can sit there and act like I'm going to meditate, but it's going to be wasting my time, right? And there's better use of that. If I'm going to do something spiritual, I could do other things besides just sitting there and being mad at myself for not being able to meditate.
Yeah.
You know, and so... you know, we have that. You can't just like meditate on demand. You have to be in a headspace where you can meditate.
Oh yeah. I mean, if your day was really crazy, sometimes you just Or because I mean, who wants to loop on? You know, misery. Like if you had like,
let the thought flow in and flow out.
Yes.
The cycle of negativity.
Well,
nostril out does not. Holding the nostrils.
Breathe in that bag.
Bringing it back to the breath.
They call that like doom scrolling, right? Like there's actually a term for it where like people will just like read through a terrible thread on Twitter, ad infinitum, and then they'll feel like crap for the rest of the day because they've raised their stress level so high, and then there's no resolution, right?
Yeah, it's just misery.
Yeah. So meditation, definitely try it. But if you are stressing about, I don't meditate enough, that is literally the opposite of the goal that you're going for, right?
Yeah. Have you guys ever done yoga nidra?
I've never done yoga nidra, no.
It's really cool. It's like you're just laying, it's meditating, but the person guides you, and it's point of your body. So it's like shift your focus to like, you know, like your head and your eyes. And so you just follow what they're saying and each part of your body, and then before you know it, you're just like, because all you're thinking about is your body soon enough. And then you're just like, oh, I feel so good now. Like, I don't know, it just like tricks you into meditating. It's so weird. They have them on like YouTube and, probably Spotify. It's called Yoga Nidra. And I'll do it sometimes, like if I can't fall asleep.
Yeah.
Not often. Like I used to do it a lot more. But you just lay and it just goes
concentrate,
around your body.
and then as you, by the time you get around, it's all...
You're like really chill.
Even people who like, I have a friend who has, pretty severe ADHD and he lifts weights quite often, right? That is all about focusing on one muscle group to like move up and down without compensating with others. If you can connect with your assigned meat suit that way and like control it to that level, that is absolutely meditation in its purest form. Yes. your physical body, I'm sorry.
This vessel.
This is what I was assigned. Here I am.
It's a new saying now.
Yeah,
your assigned meat suit, yes.
That's funny.
So, but yeah, I mean, there's 1,000,001 different ways to meditate. And I think, everybody immediately goes to the Western thought, which is, someone sitting on a cushion, sitting a sauna, which is great if you can do that. I personally, because we do have cushions, but I also have a desk job. And so like my right hip flexor is super tight. So I can't sit a sauna. So like I don't meditate that way. And that's okay because I found a way that works for me. Binaural beats are actually my like favorite thing lately for meditation. Yeah,
those are. I was into that for a while.
Yeah.
At one point, and I don't know. You just move in and out of different things, but those are really helpful. It's really helpful.
We'll have to bring over the singing bowls sometime.
I would love that. She loves singing bowls. I love the singing bowls.
Yeah. I don't. What kind do I have? I don't remember.
She's like a little
I think it's the Tibetan one. Like it's like bronze or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, our friend Kayla gifted to me a couple years ago. So I do that all the time.
Very cool. Yeah, singing bowls are fantastic. I use them to charge moon water. With a specific chakra or note or like just to kind of set that intention for what it's for. But they're fantastic. Or bath water. If I do baths, I'll charge it that way as well.
Wow.
You said you were sensitive to vibrations. Do you feel that way moving through the world too, or just like sounds? Like when you enter like a public space.
Oh, that's a good question.
Like
so.
Sorry, I jumped
no.
in my head.
So vibrations are something that I can actually typically set with myself and feel the room around me. I can literally feel the vibration in your basement, right? You could just, the stuff that's going on in your house. Outside, you can feel the vibration. I have a difficult time on bridges, right? Because, I mean, it's physical. We're talking physical. I mean, everything's vibrating constantly. Everything is, when gravity and, the world, right? Everything is constantly vibrating. So, a lot of times I can, if you're walking up the stairs, right? Like I'm following, people coming down the halls, down the stairs, right? Just in my mind. Just, not the physical hearing, but just knowing they're coming, right? Through the vibration that's coming, the anticipation of that. So any physical movement, I can feel.
Wow.
Our house is 4 floors total, and if I go out the basement door and he's in the attic in our bedroom, he will know. Oh, wow. So it's very Princess and the Pea, but like all the time.
Our homes are alive. I think people think that these, these old wood and the but these, it's just a ball of energy here that is, sitting here and, So I feel vibration all the time. That's why when I do the singing bowls, I put a lot of thought and intention into my vibration because it's resonating it out in the world.
Is there any way to silence it, or that's just how you exist?
Ignoring anything will silence it.
Okay.
Right. So for me, we're talking physical vibration of the world, right? I mean, we're not talking spiritual vibration. Yeah. We're talking actually the vibration somebody's body gives you, right? Negative, positive, we're a lot of those. So you can't shut it off, but you just, if you ignore it, you don't tune to it.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Like, and so, you can hear, like, the difference is you can hear the cars in the distance, right? You can hear the highway in the distance. It's when you can feel the highway in the distance is the difference in vibration. You're not going to hear, the movement. Yes, you could hear somebody coming down the stairs, right? But you can't sense when they're leaving the room with, before the sounds come. And that's really the vibration that we're tapping into, or that I'm tapping into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like large groups of people, is that
overwhelming?
Okay, I was gonna ask you because I instantly thought of like a club and like like the music, you can feel like the music and wow.
Yes, I think just from a general again, any type of vibration, construction site, roads, driving, right? Like you can feel it, but it's just a different way to feel the road, right? Okay. You can feel the individual bumps along the way, right? The vibration is just felt differently. And it has created a lot of problems for me. I have a hard time staying in hotels at the top, right? I can feel the sway of buildings, in Pittsburgh, I had to go to the very top of PPG, right? But like, I can feel the building moving.
Wow. Ooh. Wow.
And it bothers me.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Does it feel calm in here for you?
Yeah, no.
It's very calm right now. Like I was talking.
I can never work in a high rise.
Yeah, if you guys were on the penthouse of like a building downtown, there's no way. Wow. We would have been like, you gotta come down here.
So
the sway, because it's just energy elevated into the sky, and the vibration's constantly vibrating.
You are also a very grounded person, so. Happiest flat on your feet.
I don't know. My Reiki person put me. They were grounding me last week. So I don't know how grounded
Grounding is a.
They told me I need it grounded.
Everybody could use more grounding. Shameless plug for grounding rituals. Get into it. Tell your friends.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that.
Right.
I feel like sometimes whenever like you do like start practicing spiritual things, for me anyway, it's really easy for me to like get way like. I have to bring myself back to where I'm at, and
yeah.
I don't know, because I think it's Neptune is in retrograde.
Oh, okay.
So it's very easy for me to go off.
I know what you mean though. Like my astrology specifically, since you were just mentioning it. So my sun sign is Gemini, moon is Virgo. So the data-driven stuff that you were talking about earlier. As a fellow Virgo, and then my moon is Piscean. So triple mutable signs, but. I've noticed that for like my spiritual connection in the way, so like part of my practice is in meditation, I will receive symbols, names, and they are attached to entities or guides or ancestral spirits or, personal facets of my own psyche, right? For example, there's one of them that controls my ability to meet challenges and learn from them, and that is what that symbol is specifically for. So it's kind of like I get to do this kind of pathing down where it goes from being like water imagining into earth data into communicated out through like some symbol or language. So that's actually been something that I found very enjoyable, but it's something that I found easy to go in and out of very quickly. Because like I'll just be like hanging out, kind of zenned out, and I'll be like, here's a symbol, here's a name, this is the color that goes with it, right? So...
I thought that's really amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
Huh?
You get like the data downloads.
Yeah. They come in phrases at certain points as well. And some of them are associated with phrases to kind of give you an understanding of like what their identity is. So I'm not sure if it's an alphabet yet. I'm not sure if they're for divination or what. But I've got probably 20 of them that have shown up in the course of the last 2 years.
Wow. And they tell you what they're for.
Yeah.
Now, have you used them? Do you use them?
Yeah.
Regularly?
Actually, the party that you guys came to for like New Year's or something we had at another friend's house. On top of one of the syrups that I'd infused, there were like little personal sigils on top of all of them for different things. Like one of them is like fire, so that can be like destroying fire, or it can be personal, gain, pushing forward sort of thing. So that was one of them I used. One of them is for matters of the heart and empathy and healing specifically. That was another one. So I don't use all of them yet because I don't understand all of them, but...
Do you think, like you said, Lily has a bunch of vortexes, that you were activated to a certain extent when you went there?
I absolutely, like, it was like, no question at all. Like, so I never, would you say I cry a lot?
I never.
Okay.
Never.
I'm talking like, this woman was like, I have a message for you, can I tell you? And I was like, yes. And then immediately started crying before she even started talking. Like, and it was not like a, funeral cry, it was like relief. Like, if you've ever had something that you've just been so scared and stressed out and then suddenly having that let go. I'm like pseudo-emotional here right now. Yeah. It was like, boom. So it was very much, much activation.
We together, he was an atheist.
Staunch atheist.
Staunch atheist. Mm-hmm. The moment that he received the first reading, it was so undeniable that he began to cry. And instantly knew that he had found spiritualism. Mm-hmm. And been probably one of the best things for us personally. Our relationship has never been better. It's just we're growing as spiritual beings.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in discovering something to care about beyond yourself. And I know that sounds like silly, but like as humans we spend a lot of time being self-absorbed just for survival and because animal instinct, right? And so it was one part that, it was also that it gives me an opportunity to have a religion where I can verify my belief system scientifically, right? Like, again, our measurements of everything are not perfect, but I can make the correlation and the jump to understand, like I said earlier, if you can make a healing salve, if you can make a pharmaceutical drug, that is from naturally occurring things. And you call it chemistry, some would call it alchemy in a different period, right? Some would just call that magic in another period. So it's been helpful for me to kind of like break down what I was brought up / conditioned to believe, and just overall be a little bit more open to like, well, what if we did it this way, or what if it is this way this time, right? So just kind of reflecting on the way that the world is put together, because we make our own realities.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. You went to Lilydale that day, probably just, we're going on a trip, and then
I was extremely skeptical.
Really?
Because Jeff had actually tried years before to explain the philosophy of energy to me, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But I was very not into it. So we went with another friend of ours, and nothing happened for him, probably because there wasn't the openness, but I just kind of at some point said, this place is cool, I feel really chill, no one is attacking each other, and it's 2020, and that's refreshing, so I'm going to give this a shot. And so we went for a public message, and like, there's probably 15 pews, 3 rows of 15 pews, right? So quite
pews
a bit of seating.
Pews sound like a church.
I know.
They're benches in the woods. They're not.
It's
pews.
called the cathedral. Anyway.
It is called the cathedral, but the pews, they get rained on. They're not like pews.
Okay. Yes, the benches, probably, I mean, like about 45 of them or 30 of them, and so there's a lot of people there, right? Mm-hmm. You don't always get a message. They do 2 sessions a day, so I went in there like, yeah, we'll see if this happens, and it did, like very early on, and I was genuinely shocked. And then the second message I received was, you have been shown this place because you are here to learn some things and pick up a few tips and tricks of your own to take with you to the outside.
Jeez. Wow.
So,
oh my goodness. So what happened after that? Did you just, were you like, yeah,
we went back 20 times in the last 2 years.
Yep. Jeff bought me my first tarot deck, and I started reading tarot from my deck with Lilydale. I've expanded into Oracle. That's really where I got into meditative practice.
Someday we'll live there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No doubt. That it is the Disneyland of spiritualist.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't wait to go.
It's super. I mean, like, we're talking this up, so like I'm now nervous. I'm like, oh god, what if I hate it? But like, it's
No.
Sure I won't.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any way. Like, everyone is so nice. Like, you walking down the street and people you don't know will just wave to you and tell you have a good day, and like they actually mean it.
Wow.
And so it reminds me a lot of being like 7 or 8 years old, right? Well, like when you're still open enough and you understand about the world, but like you're not afraid of every stranger. You're not immediately expecting someone to pull the rug out from under you.
You don't steal from a psychic. They will come after
Yes.
you. They know who you are.
Yes, they do. Yes, they
With
do.
all those things.
Right?
It's the safest place on earth.
Yeah, I mean, jeez, wow.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Like, I don't have to go.
It's cool.
Curious.
We'll definitely go.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
I mean,
Do you guys know who John White was? Okay. You would know more about him than I do, but he did a lot of different, he had a lot of different things in his practice. A lot of it was medicine wheel readings.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people there who do like Native American inspired stuff. There are a lot of people who do tarot. There's a lot of people who do...
That's the beauty of it. It's not just one set. I mean, everyone has a place there.
Yeah. Because if you're a person with aphantasia, which is this affliction where you can't visualize, you have no visual imagination, right? So if you have a medium who's saying, visualize a pool of light, and you can't do that, it's not helpful, right? But if you're working with somebody who is able to communicate with a spirit guide, like that one woman that we saw, or is able to do like tactile energy transfer, totally different ball game, right? So it's kind of the Swiss Army knife for being able to like jumpstart your spiritual journey. And also you can like touch the stump, which again, talking it up a lot, but like you feel it. It's a clockwise motion, it spins downward, and it is visceral.
Oh wow, yeah, I would just go I wouldn't question anything. It's interesting too, because I feel like if you are on a spiritual journey and you don't know where to start, it sounds like there's a lot of resources there, like a lot of people who are very knowledgeable in a lot of things that could kind of like guide you in the right direction. I mean,
they have throughout summer they have classes. I went to my first seance there, in 2004. Tells you, so they've been having these all summer long. They have workshops. They have circles, right? So Wednesday night circles. They have the public, the messaging every day, and then they, just all other different types of educational programs. I think a lot of times for me, nothing has really changed on my core fundamental beliefs, but I figured out what we call that in spiritualism, right? So I've always believed in animal magnetism and energy and the transfer of energy, but I had to discover that that's actually something that is a science, is a philosophy, has been so. It's so different. I think for a lot of people, my problem is I have such an intuitive sense that I can look at something and say, I don't believe it, I believe that. Right? And it's just, it's black or white, and it's either I believe it or I don't believe it. And it is really what it is for me. And so that's how I take and look at all of my spiritual growth, is just absorbing the information, connecting with spirit, meditating, and then coming up with what I actually believe. And that's what I believe then, and that's what I've discovered on my own, not what somebody's told me or not something I've read. I'll use those as points and suggestions, and then sit with myself and figure out really what it is that I believe.
There's also a lot of so when we went there a couple times ago, there's a gentleman who runs the shop there, and he is, you can get tarot cards, oracle decks, Egyptian-based items there, scrying bowls, sage, all sorts of stuff, even Christian charms and stuff as well, right? So multi-denominational iconography and tools there. So all of that stuff is readily available if you want to pick it up. And then when I actually talked to him, because he lives there, and so you have to be a registered medium to live there, he at some point just looked directly at me. This is the second or third time I met him, and he was like, you're empathic, and for whatever reason, there's something about you that you purposefully guard your emotional attachments from developing with people. And I was like, way to call me out on a Thursday. But, so just people like that all around who will just say things to you, and they'll be like, it's probably whatever for them, but you walk away and you're like, whoa.
Wow, I'll eat that up actually.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I'm like, please, what am I not seeing?
I was gonna say, call me out. More of that.
I'm trying to get better with my, myself. So.
Yeah.
Wow, that just all of it sounds really wonderful. I mean,
it's good. It is really nice to have a way to let go for a little while. Everybody could always use a little bit more peace, and so. Even if you don't end up believing in it, I would say, which I don't think is really going to be the case, but, give these different practices a try. Find something that you enjoy and go for it. The worst that you do is you lose a Saturday. So what? Mm-hmm. The best thing is that you find something that really gives you meaning to life, and you can continue to do that as a thing that enriches you.
Yeah, I just keep learning.
Yeah.
I really like learning.
Same.
I know,
Mercury.
Silly. What is this? And sometimes I'll read stuff. I don't do anything with it. I just want to know. I think it's fun. But I wouldn't know that I didn't want to do whatever it is if I hadn't learned about it.
Right.
And if I wasn't that seeker. So I think it's really important that you mention that. Just be a seeker and feel things out. And it seems like Lilydale is a great place to be that.
Yeah, definitely.
Good starting point.
Yeah, and to be able to talk to a human about something, not just read on the internet, or it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's just this bubble of just knowledge and in that realm. Like, oh, I want to learn about shamanic journey, and there's somebody there that can do it, or or tarot, or
probably a class on it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if there's not, there will be soon.
All right, so this is the end of the first half of this episode with Ferranti and Jeff.
Episode part 1, Ferranti and Jeff.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? This year was a lot of fun, and I feel like they.
What you guys think? It's just me.
I like to talk like there's people in the room,
You can leave a comment.
Leave a comment.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great having them over and talking, and they're just both so knowledgeable on so much. I feel like I learned something whenever I hang out with them.
I really, 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 really enjoyed hearing about the mesmerizing stuff. The mesmer.
Well, they've sold me on Lilydale, so
we'll be going there.
Yeah. All right. So thanks for listening, guys. And there's Reiki at the end of the episode. Yeah.
That's it.
See you guys later.